It was January 10th. Alexis was doing her Bevo ski program. I received the first phone call from her Bevo instructor saying that Alexis had hurt herself in the trees pretty bad. She was in a great deal of pain.
When I broke my leg, it was a spiral fracture.
15 minutes later, once ski patrol arrived on saying that it was more serious than they thought and that they felt that it was serious enough that they needed to get her directly to an ambulance. So I had gotten to the hospital and I walked in and I could hear her screaming from the second I walked in the door. They came in to do the x-ray and everybody was amazing. We had your favorite one nurse.
Shrek.
And we call him that because of his accent. He was sitting there holding her leg to try to help ease the pain.
I thought he was making it feel worse, so he did stop holding it lightly, and then that just made it feel even worse, so I told him to pull on it again.
So they took the x-ray and came back in and said that it was really serious and that it needed surgery. Dr. Viola said he could do the surgery and do it right away. He came down, he looked at the x-ray, and he pulled my husband and I aside and he said, I know you know me as a hand surgeon, but I have done a ton of trauma in my past and I feel very confident that I can do this surgery and do it really well. We had a hard time coming out of surgery and we had a hard time for the next probably about 12 to 48 hours. They had a really difficult time getting her pain management under control. And while she was in recovery, I would say probably the first little snag that we hit was that being that she was a pediatric, the nurses weren't sure what the dose was. They kept checking and double checking and calling and making sure that they had that correct dose. So I was really impressed. I mean, obviously it took a little bit of extra time, but I think it was really helpful.
One thing I didn't like is that when I woke up, Mom and Dad weren't there.
They didn't let us be there right away when she woke up. And they did warn us that they needed to make sure you would be able to breathe on your own before we could come back and be with you. They had us start physical therapy. You had two amazing OT and PT.
Melissa and Ashley. They were really nice. They were gentle. They knew what they were doing. I just really liked them.
Our first goal was to just move from the bed to the chair. Alexis had adopted her own system of moving with a pillow in between her leg. And Melissa and Ashley were amazing because they realized that was the only way they were going to get her to move. They would come in and say, you know, let's help get her a bite to eat before she starts. Let's make sure she's rested. And it became kind of a thing in the hospital that she wouldn't move without them. I can't say enough nice things, just everything from everyone in the hospital making my husband and I and my other daughter comfortable so that we could spend time with her, from, you know, ordering us meals and setting up the room to be comfortable for all of us.
And they let Charlie come in once, and that was when I was taking off my surgery bandage. And so the doctors let him come in, which I really liked.
Rather than the nurses coming in, Ashley and Melissa were called, and they came in to remove the bandage for you. Dr. Viola said that she would not be able to weight bear for at least 3 months. Upon leaving, we were recommended to a great physical therapist. They had set up our first whole week of appointments, starting with the next day. And overall, I would say that first experience there was a great experience under the circumstances. So then we were told that Alexis would most likely have to have surgery again, and that it would be any time in the next year.
Dr. Viola, he told me all about if I didn't do a second surgery, what would happen, if I did, what would happen. He told me all the pros and cons.
Dr. Viola said, you know, the bone looks good. If we want to, we can take the hardware out. She's stable with it in, but if the hardware stays in, then the bone relies on the hardware and never gets strong on its own.
One thing I asked him for my second surgery was if I could not have stitches, and he said he could do that. And so what he did instead was stitches underneath my skin, and there were just 2 little knots that came out that I just had to get those clipped off, and that didn't hurt. But then they did the special glue to glue it back together. So I'm happy that he listened to me and didn't do stitches.
On the 14th of December, our surgery was scheduled for 1 o'clock that day, and we had to be at the hospital at 11. I don't think surgery started till at least 3.
One thing I didn't like about that was they didn't have rooms. Just curtains between everyone, and there was this guy around us that was complaining, and it was kind of annoying because he was swearing and yelling at the doctors.
It was pretty upsetting.
I went into a room and they let my mom come in, It was really cold in there, which is the first thing I didn't like. And also there were machines everywhere, which is just as scary. At least they had Christmas music playing. But then they had to put this mask on me so that would make me fall asleep, and it smelled really, really bad. I was like crying, and then I just fell asleep.
We thought it was going to be a lot easier to take her back. They said we could mask her and put her out that way and then do the IV. They were like, maybe that would be less traumatizing. I think we needed a little, I think we needed a little more detail on that, because they were great and had me suit up, and they said you can come right back to the operating room with her. You'll be right there until she falls asleep. But it was a really tough thing to walk away from, and to have that be the last thing I saw as she was going under. And I think the surgery was a little longer than they expected, and we didn't have communication. We had a few moments of panic because I think a good 2 hours went by, and then we did get the call that surgery took longer and that she was still in the surgical room, but that we would be able to come up shortly. So she was supposed to go home the next day. Well, she didn't sleep all through the night, and they had made a mistake and put the IV in her wrist instead of in her arm here.
So I couldn't really do PT because I had this whole splint thing to keep my wrist straight so that the IV would stay in the right spot.
And PT came in, and unfortunately it was not our favorite people.
She wasn't as gentle, not as sympathetic, I would say. She would come and I would be tired, and she would just have me get out of bed and do all this stuff.
She just couldn't do it whenever the lady came in. She was too exhausted, and I think she just didn't feel connected enough to make it work. So we ended up coming home Friday night, but we were recommended another great physical therapist for Alexis, and we were able to address specifics.
She loved Harry Potter.
So we worked with her, and she was great because she addressed specifics. We said Alexis wanted to get back to soccer right away and wanted to get back to running, and so Alexis was on a walker and in a wheelchair for a few weeks. So it is now October. Alexis is full on back to, what are all the activities you do now?
Soccer, skiing, dance.
Some really special touches were that all through the week during the first surgery, a number of people kept coming to check in on her.
If I could go back, I'd want different blankets, and I would also want more kids stuff, like the nightgowns. It's all adult sizes, so I would have to wear huge ones.
I loved that we saw the same people over and over again. It was just so nice that at night to know that you were getting the same nurse. And they would say, well, we're going to be back tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's nice having the same one or two people because they're on track with how you're doing.
No one ever told us that we had too many people in a room, or that we weren't allowed to have visitors, or that it was a bad time.
Or that we had too much stuff in there.
Or that we had too much stuff, and everybody came in to make sure it was cleaned up and comfortable for her, and you had everything you needed and always had a drink with you.
Oh, and everything was clean, which was nice.
Everybody was great about coming in and housekeeping and cleaning, and especially as she was getting sick throughout the night. I mean, not one person let her sit in anything. I mean, they came in and changed her gown, changed her sheets completely, did it so gently so that she didn't have to get out of bed. We're proud to live in a valley that has such great medical services. And again, when presented with the option to go down to Denver, it was like, why would we do that when we have all the resources up here? We hope we don't have to end up in the hospital again. Hopefully. But overall, we are proud to have Vail Hospital.